Good evening and welcome to Northeast Truth Radio, hosted by TNS Radio. This is Mike Cooper. I'm joined with Simon John Wood. Simon, are you there?
I am. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. Before we get into tonight's show, I'll let you know what's going on in the Northeast. We've got Ian Crane coming up to Middlesbrough for a 3-hour talk, which is on September the 11th. And if you've got a pen handy, anyone in the Northeast that's up for that one, it's at the Baptist Church in, I think it's Redcar Road, South Bank, Middlesbrough. It's £5 on the door. So I think he's going to cover things like the BP oil spill, false flag, information war, and some of the other things that I'm not too sure of. But that's the nearest thing on the calendar. Now, tonight's guest has been described as a teacher's teacher. He was born in Northern Ireland and is a researcher of the occult. He's an author and public speaker on a massive range of subjects, including symbolism, astro-theology, Atlantis. Also the producer and presenter of the Origins and Oracles series, which goes into ancient mysteries and forbidden knowledge. Also an expert on the occult histories of Ireland and America. He obviously made a lot of deep research into his own country's ancient and mysterious Celtic tradition. His presentations on Atlantis and the origins of evil have been acclaimed by veterans in the field of paranormal research. Also a divination scholar and sidereal mythologist. If you haven't guessed who we're talking about yet, the answer is MICHAEL TSARION. Are you there, Michael?
Yes, indeed, Mike. Nice to be with you.
Evening, Michael. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Pleasure to be on.
Looking forward to the show. We generally like to keep things quite casual here rather than a formal interview style, so we'll just crack right on into it. Do you want to tell us what's going on with you recently? Any talks coming up, or what you've been up to in the last few months?
Well, this year I've been kind of busy just doing a lot of solo projects. There's a couple of DVDs on their way, 3 in all, and then there is a couple of conferences coming up. I get invited all over the place, but I say no to most things. But I think in October I'll be in the States at the UFO Expo, and there's Scotland the Wake Up Call conference. I'll be there at that one, which is put on by some good friends of mine. And people can go to my calendar of events page on the forum that I have. They can always keep abreast of the changes. I feature the radio shows there and various public appearances as well. So those are going to be interesting. And the DVDs is the Tree of Life and the Disciples of the Mysterium, and also working on Architects of Control, the second in that series. So we're doing a hell of a lot of work going on there. I've also got 3 new YouTube channels with a load of material on there, some of them connected to these other websites I've been mentioning.
Excellent. I think the Architects of Control has been one of the most popular ones that I've seen of late, so I'm definitely looking forward to the second one. Disciples of the Mysterium is something I started watching on YouTube, but I didn't get into it for very long. Could you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, that was primarily accident. I've been studying philosophy for years and years and years, and I personally knew there was a big tie-in to the other work that I do, which is conspiracy and psychology, but I didn't think that the public that listens to me would be that interested in it. And it just was a series of events that did the article, and then got a couple of interview opportunities just to go with it. And it turned out to be, quite acceptable at this time. I mean, years have gone by. People are very, very up to speed on a lot of things, so it seemed to work, the tie in the philosophical aspects. And there's a DVD on the way that's basically based on the work that I've done on that. It still is, again, based in conspiracy. One of the ideas that I've always wanted to push hard, and I did speak of it in the Atlantis book, it's pertinent to the Atlantis work, but I wanted to continue really emphasizing it, was the fact that what happens to the whole of history, what happens even to the whole of philosophy, if it turns out that these ancient civilizations existed. One of the earliest philosophers that's taught to people who study philosophy is Plato, of course, and Plato's work was full of these references. In fact, people who study Atlantis know full well that Plato was one of the first people to speak of these lost continents in ancient times. So that's well known, but I don't think people have really got the grips with the idea that, look, if these continents once existed and if mankind experienced incredible cataclysm, then two things that maybe Plato didn't bring out, or at least has never been thought about too much, go with that. One is that mankind was not primitive or rude or cannibalistic in the past. And that already shakes to the foundation not only the general evolution theories, which all science and all theology is based on, that man, as he's progressed in history, has got wiser, smarter, better, technologically more civilized. Well, once you bring on board the old theories pertaining to the ancient civilizations and then add to it the new scientific discoveries about what's happened on this earth, the cataclysms, the fossil record, once you bring all that to bear, well then that consensus, that chronology, right, of man's development simply is no longer sustainable. I mean, people in the alternative movement already knew that that wasn't sustainable, because how, after all, could it be that the processing of bronze and copper and tin predate the processing of iron? It's more complex to do those. So yet the more complex processing of these ores is, earlier in time. The construction of megaliths gets more precise as you go back in time. And then the elders of every single civilization, ancient civilization on Earth, are always repeating that their ancestors, meaning the more ancient elders, were smarter and more intelligent, more divinely inspired, you see, than the ones later on. So we have a lot of evidence showing that what we've been sold officially is just lies. And then the other thing that comes with that, once you take this all on board, but which philosophy has certainly never incorporated, is that if in fact the elders and the sages and the mystics are right, that in these days before the decline of these great civilizations, man was also more spiritually advanced. Well, now you have a problem to say that once upon a time man was directly whole brain, man was once upon a time directly connected to the great gnosis of life, the knowledge, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And since then, he's been getting further and further and further away. This has never been really explored in the detail that I wanted to explore, because right away then you have also undermined the entire scientism, which is again saying that it's as we progress that we're going to head towards utopia, all the answers, cracking the God code, living longer, the perfect utopian society, which of course immediately ties into what, right? Big Brother and their whole jive. I mean, it's connected deeply to conspiracy. Well, right away, the moment that you take on board that man was spiritually more wise, had greater understanding of the meaning of existence in ancient days, which has been said in all these legends, well, then you have now a massive critique of all of the scientism of the world. That doesn't refute that we need science and technology. I'm not saying that. But the underpinning ideology, that it's this endless sequence of white-coated scientists, a great chain of intellectuals leading mankind ever forward to the great revelation, which is the basis of Hegel's philosophy. It was the basis of so many, it was the basis of Lutheranism, the ideology of Lutheranism, the work ethic. It's the basis of the entire American culture is based on this. Well, if that turns out to be, not true, that's a massive thing to let people know about. That's why I wanted to basically do that, for those two reasons, and then of course there's a whole bunch of other reasons as well. But those are the two most important ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a massively significant point that the entire chronology of human development is pointing in the polar opposite direction to the way we're travelling then.
Yeah,
as you say, philosophy's completely turned on its head.
Yes, it is.
We accept that we're not progressing, but actually going backwards in terms of humanist civilization rather than city-dwelling modern life.
That's right. And a layman can then take that on board and see that when they look out into the world, what I'm talking about will make sense now of this state of decay, because it is, in fact, in my head, absolutely correct. Now, of course, we know that many have touched upon that in other fields. I'm not the first to have been saying, oh, man was smarter in ancient times. That's as old as so many scholars like, Edgar Casey, Ignatius Donnelly, Madame Blavatsky, and then moving up to Graham Hancock's and Michael Cremos and Lloyd Pye, and even official people like Richard Milton and Ellen and Dallaire. There's many people who've theorized that it might be that way, but not in philosophy. In philosophy, there's been a giant gap, almost as if philosophers have never themselves questioned this, even though their patriarch, the Socratic, Platonic philosophy, mused on the fact that these ancient civilizations are there. That's in philosophy. Then why has philosophers not? It's even in Zen. It's in many proto-religious teachings that man was a greater being intellectually and spiritually and morally. My God, it's in the Irish legends. It's in all of the British legends that there was a falling off, that man is getting weaker, his life is getting shorter, his morals are going out the window, he's becoming a barbarian as time progresses. Then why is it that in philosophy, because many now problems of philosophy can be answered this way? I mean, that's what the Disciples of the Mysterium goes into, so that people can, start looking at this, because it's very involved, of course, to continue with that discussion. So I tried to lay it out there, and as you know, people don't read, they watch DVD, so then again, accident, people saying, look, we'd rather have this on a DVD, and I said, well, okay, so be it, I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Present it in that way.
It's nice to be able to refer back to the literature, though. I mean, I hope you are still going to further the publications as well, not just become a technocrat like the rest of us.
No, for many reasons. I mean, of course, I did write this article first, and it's going to be there for those who want more of the detail and the links and things like that. But I have to be cognizant, again, it's like what I was saying about architects of control. In this last 2 years, I've been very cognizant of the newcomers, and they need to have it in a medium that is satisfactory to them. I mean, obviously, just doing these other DVDs gets in the way of, other important projects I'm working on, like the Architects of Control, but I have to do it, in a way. When I'm very open like that, so when life leads you, say, okay, you were doing this, but, kind of maybe go slow on that for a minute, because this has now become more important, I will literally do that, and I found that it works for me, because these are critical. I mean, there's actually every week, that's what my forum's for. I just put up a link recently showing that they've now made discoveries that there may be a complete mystery particle never even known before emitted by the sun. But guess what? That is enough of a shocker in the first place. But then they've discovered that this particle affects carbon dating. It affects all readings based on carbon dating. Well, that's no small thing.
Well, that's about as huge in the terms of mainstream science as it could be if the entire carbon dating record has to be re-examined, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like, wham bam, a Batman comic, kapow, to every scientist whose consensus, my God, what a rigid consensus. And then they kind of turn around to you, because remember, they have obviously carbon dated artifacts that blow their consensus, but then they turn around and going, well, that sample was contaminated.
Yeah, anomalous.
Yeah, so we don't file that, but any sample that backs the consensus, yes, that's good to go, that's part of the scientific record, head over to the Smithsonian and we'll tell you all about it. Read the medical journals, not medical journals, but scientific journals, and we'll happily tell you all about the history of anthropology and archaeology, but any artifact that looks like, oh my God, this doesn't explain a damn thing, this takes civilization back millions of years, oh, well, we're sorry about that, that's contaminated. Right? And then I put up another one on the forum about the discoveries of Tutankhamun and his DNA that now proves that the pharaohs of the 18th dynasty turn out, as I've said for years, and is the heart of other work I've done, actually is of Western dynasty. This is the main pharaoh that's put in front of us by all the lying Afrocentrists who are funded by the United Nations and other more shady orgs.
Yeah.
They have many, and by the way, I'm not saying that there weren't black pharaohs. Let's get that straight. There were.